because if we don't, that's going to be a problem. There we go. Best way to support this show is hit that subscribe button, give us that thumbs up, ring that bell. If you're on YouTube, Twitch, well, if you're on Twitter, just say hello and subscribe to us, follow us. Hey, Hugh, how are you, man? And the super chat is open. If anybody wants to super chat us, we really do appreciate the love, and we will show the love back. Dirty Filth, good to see you here, my friend. All right, let's rock and roll. We're going to get this rocket fired up right now. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Oh, we got a good one for you tonight. Debbie Jordan-Kauble was the central figure in Bud Hopkins' New York Times bestseller, Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods, as well as the 1992 CBS miniseries, Intruders, using the pseudonym Kathy Davis to protect her young family. But in 1992, Debbie decided to reveal her true identity and co-authored with her sister Kathy, Abducted. The story of The Intruders Continues. Debbie very rarely makes public appearances, but she has appeared on television shows, everything from the Discovery Channel to Maury Povich, Oprah Winfrey, and many, many more. I'm telling you, this is a real deal. This is the type of story I live for. Why? Because for many of us out there, we have lived the unknown experience. We know the emotion. We know the fear. We know the anger, the angst, the anxiety that goes along with it. And most of all, we know the questions that follow afterwards. Debbie Jordan-Kauble, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
We are so glad to have you here because the one thing about this show is it's one thing to bring in researchers who continually talk about the research that they have or the book that they have written, but it's an entirely different type of program when you bring in someone who is experienced, someone who has run the gamut through all of this strange happenings and had to battle through not only the experience, but life itself and the problems that it causes. So for you, let's go way back in time. Before this even happened, were you a believer in UFOs and little gray men from up in the stars?
Well, I was born into a family that had weird stuff happen to them all the time. So to me, it was normal. Not necessarily UFO related, but more paranormal related. We had weird things happen in the house all the time. And my mom or dad, would say, oh, that was our ghost or whatever. And when my mom and dad had my older sister, who's 11 years older than me, they had her in a different house than they live in now. And they wanted to have more kids, but never were able to. And so mom did go to the doctor. They told her that she would just probably not have any more kids. And they moved to a new house. And within 6 months of the house they moved into, I was conceived. 6 months after me, 6, 7 months after I was born, they got pregnant with my brother. And then my little sister came right after him. But the funny thing about it was the house they moved into and the neighborhood they moved into was a neighborhood where people would climb up on their roofs at night to watch UFOs.
Oh, wow.
They literally would climb up on their roofs and drag lawn chairs up there and look at the stars and wait for, because people thought they saw things in the sky. So, I grew up thinking it was normal. Found out it wasn't quite as normal as I thought, but.
Well, so you had an understanding that this type of phenomena may be real growing up from a young age.
Yeah, so I was raised by open-minded people, so.
So my question to you is, did you actually believe at that time that there was aliens in spaceships up in our skies flying around? I
think I just assumed they were there. It was never an option for it not to be, I can remember at a really young age laying in my bed or laying out in the yard at night looking at the stars and wondering if someone was up there laying in their yard looking at my star,
Wow. That's actually kind of profound to have that thoughts at such a young age.
I had a lot of weird thoughts at a young age. I am who I am.
But that's a beautiful thing, though, because you recognize that there was more to this planet and more to Earth. I remember growing up, we didn't grow up in a religious family, but my mother did. And my father, well, he was a five senses kind of guy up until a few years ago when I scared the hell out of him on a ghost tour that I was on. But the idea behind the fact that you grew up in that era with that sort of belief is actually very rare, considering at that time the majority of society was still quite religious or going to school and getting educated. There wasn't a lot of time for this type of woo type talk.
Oh, and we didn't talk about it outside the family with a lot of other people. Don't get me wrong in that, but and I quickly learned when I went to school that it wasn't something that everybody had knowledge of or thought about, so I just wouldn't talk about it. And when I first when I first reached out to Bud Hopkins about what had happened to me and my story and my experience became public, back then, this is the last thing you'd ever want to be famous for. Trust me. And I was always self-conscious anyway, because I grew up the chubby girl and I was always shy in public and stuff. And so this made it even worse trying to talk about it in public. And, times have really changed. It's really changed. Now you can go to Walmart and buy a T-shirt with alien heads on it, and it's cool to be abducted. And people go out on beaches in big groups and try to call in the UFOs. And we didn't do that 30 years ago. That didn't happen very much. It did, but not very often.
Nobody was shooting lasers into the sky in order to try and attract them. That's for sure.
No, times have changed, and good. I'm glad.
For you growing up, and I'm trying to just learn about you before we get into your experience here, near the bottom of the hour and after the break. But for you growing up, did you wish to see something? Did you wish to have something happen? Did you put that energy out there?
When I was a young kid growing up, like I mentioned, laying up in the yard at night on the swing set, looking at the stars, I felt like I was missing something. And I felt homesick for a place I'd never been and missing people that I never met. You know what I mean? This kind of odd kind of something was missing in me, even really young. And I'm, I had a mom and dad and brothers and sisters and everything, but somehow I didn't feel quite as plugged in to them as I maybe should have. I don't know. It wasn't so much that I wished something would happen or I would see something. It was more like I knew I would.
You knew. So did you start to think as a kid that maybe you weren't from here?
No, I never thought of it like that. Not until many, many years later when people pointed it out to me, but I didn't think of it like that back then.
And now?
Now I don't know. Who knows? I mean, my mind is open. I have gut instincts about things, but I can't prove anything definitively. You know what I'm saying? So I can tell you my feelings or my opinion, but that's pretty much it.
Well, that's okay. Well, we're good with feelings here. I mean, what's important inside you is important to us.
Sometimes I feel like, maybe I've been somewhere else in the past, like past lives, and not necessarily here. You know what I mean?
So for you growing up, trying to find yourself, who you are, what you're all about, your family is out on the rooftops with lawn chairs looking for aliens and UFOs flying by. Before this experience, did you have any sightings?
I didn't have any sightings of UFOs, but I had strange experiences with contact of some kind with something that wasn't human. Prior to the June 30, 83, that was what was central around missing time. Intruders. I had a dream right after I was first married. It was early in 78. And two of these small, dark-eyed, black-eyed, big-headed gray aliens, I called them little gray guys, came into my bedroom. And I was awake, and my husband was in bed right next to me. But he never woke up, and I didn't think to wake him up. And when I first saw these two things in my room, I panicked and I was terrified, scared the heck out of me. But then somehow I calmed down, and enough that they had a little black box in their hand about the size of a shoebox, and it had a red light with like a hole in it. There was a red light coming out of it or down inside of it. And I remember asking, can I have this? What can I have this, box that he handed over to me? And he said, no. I was to look at it, that I would remember what it was for and how to use it the next time I saw it, but I couldn't keep it. And then they were gone. And I woke, and the next morning and then I fell asleep. And then next morning when I woke up, I told my husband, oh my God, you won't believe the dream I had last night, what I saw in our room. And that's why I called it a dream. I mean, I didn't, what else to call it? So, and my husband just looked at me and said, what did you eat for dinner last night? I mean, something really made you have crazy dreams. And then when I was really young, my sister, like I said, was 11 years older than me. And she used to play with the girl who lived down at the corner. And the girl didn't live at the corner. Her grandparents did. The girl lived in Detroit, but she would come down every summer and with her grandparents, and my sister and her were the same age, and they started playing together when they were little. So now at this point, my sister's like almost 18 years old. She's driving, and she had an opportunity to go to Detroit to see her friend. And since I had been playing with her friend's little sister, mom let her take me. And I think might have been in kindergarten. And so off we went to Detroit for a weekend visit with this family. And I ended up missing for an entire day. The entire day we were down there, I disappeared. And as soon as we were supposed to stay the whole weekend, and I think we came home early. But I remember playing in the backyard of this house, kicking the ball over the fence and going after it, and suddenly realizing I'm completely lost. I don't know where I am. And I feel panicky because I'm away from home, and I'm away from my sister, and I don't know where I'm at. So I walk on this. I remember the road. It was a cul-de-sac, so it was a curved sidewalk. I remember that. I remember seeing the house that I thought I should be in. I thought that was the house where we were. The door was open. So I walked into the front door, and I recognized furniture and stuff in it, but yet it was all jumbled up and in wrong places. Like, a chair would be on top of a table instead of where it would be, just things were just amiss, slightly. And I started to feel panicky and scared, and I started to run out the door. And as I started to the door, there was a little boy standing in front of me, about the same height as I was. He had big, big dark eyes, but he was, a little boy as I remembered him. And he wanted me to stay and play with him. And once I started to talk to him, I wasn't afraid anymore. And he took me to a room in this house that had, it was a weird room because it was really big and there weren't any corners. And there wasn't any lamps in there, but yet it was illuminated, like a soft illumination everywhere. And there was a kind of a drop in the floor, and there were things that I thought were toys on the floor. And I sat down to play with something, and something poked me in the leg. And I remembered when that happened, I got scared. And then the next thing I remember after that is I'm standing in the doorway of this house again, and the little boy is next to me, but here comes his mother, who is mad. She was furious that I was in that house. And I remember her saying, "What is she doing here? She doesn't belong here. She needs to leave right now." And it was like someone pushed me out the door, but yet no one touched me. And when I looked, there stood my sister at the end of the walkway on the sidewalk looking at me. And I ran up to her, and she took my hand, never said a word to me. And then we went back to the house where I was supposed to be. She walked me back there. I don't recall having any conversation with her at that point, and this was a long time ago. But years and years later, when this whole incident, my mom actually reminded me of it when Bud was at our house one time. And so, and then I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that. So I was telling him about it. And through my sister, he was actually able to contact the family who we went to in Detroit so many years before. And she remembered us coming, and she remembered that I had been missing all day and that they had the police looking for me, and that my sister had gone out and found me and brought me back.
Where did your sister find you?
I don't know. I was at that strange house, and I remember being shoved out the door. And when I looked up, there she was standing at the edge of the sidewalk ones from the front porch to the walk path that goes down the front porch to the sidewalk. She was standing at the end of the walk path on the sidewalk. There she was. And then she took me back to the house. So she found me at the house where I was at. And she didn't really remember finding me when Bud talked to her, but she remembered the trip, and she remembered me being missing. So
that is
just
so
weird stuff like that. Just weird.
I mean, that's something like almost right out of David Paulides, what we hear with his stories, and in the missing 411, where we're hearing, people being checked in one area, then all of a sudden they're not there. And then hours later, they're in that exact same spot that's already been checked. That is so weird.
That's my life.
How old were you when this happened?
I don't think I was in kindergarten yet, or I might have been in kindergarten that year. I think we figured out it was maybe 1965 or 1966. So I don't know. I was born in 1959.
My goodness. And for any parent, that is an absolute nightmare when your child goes missing.
Yep.
And for the hours that you were gone, and the police were involved, what was happening on the outside around you? Were you ever able to talk to family members about it?
No. I remember hearing my mom talk to Bud about it, saying everybody was freaking out and they were trying to find me in the neighborhood. They didn't think I could have gotten far. I remember what I had for lunch that day. It was grilled cheese and tomato soup. I don't know why I remember the weirdest little details. But it was right after lunch, so they figured I couldn't have been gone far. How far could a little kid walk, I don't know if they thought somebody might have picked me up, but I don't know.
When you were, when you were found, were you confused? A lot of kids will cry at that point, because they're lost or whatever. What were you going through as a child at that point?
The only thing I can remember is feeling relief that I saw my sister. I was happy I saw my sister and I felt relieved. That's the only thing I can remember.
No kidding.
Yep.
I have so many questions, and I'm just trying to formulate which one. So here you are, at a young age, this happens. Were you seeing ghosts? Were you intuitive back then as well?
I was seeing things. I don't know if you call them ghosts or not. I remember seeing something in our room when I was little. So we were poor. My brother and my sister and I all shared a bedroom. My little sister and I slept in one bed and my brother slept in the other. I mean, that's just the way it was back in them days. But I remember seeing something in our room one time, but it didn't look like anything that it didn't look like a human being, and it didn't look like an alien, a gray alien at all either. It looked like a black cloud pretty much, but kind of shaped like a worm, like a caterpillar, poothy. And I remember when I always made my sister sleep on the edge of the bed, and I wanted my back to the wall of the bed. I didn't want anything behind me. And I used to have dreams of leaving my body. I can distinctly remember one in particular. I was very attached to my older sister. Like I said, I worshiped the ground she walked on for the first 15 years of my life. And, when I was littler, when she would go down to Denise's house, that girl's house down in the corner, and spend the night and do what teenage girls do. And I didn't want her to go because I wanted to be with her. So I remember was one time when she had gone down to Denise's house to spend the night, and mom and dad put us to bed. And the next thing I remember, I'm in our front yard, but the light is weird. It's not dark out, but it's not sunny out either. It's an odd kind of dusky light. And there's a wind blowing, a constant wind blowing on me. And something tells me, and I don't see anybody there, but something in my mind tells me if I put my arms out and I lean into the wind like that, I can go to where my sister is. So I put my arms out and I leaned into the wind, and I felt myself lift up. And then I started to fly very slowly, and totally focused on Denise's house and fly into her bedroom window. And I swear that I went into the bedroom and I saw my sister and her friend rolling their hair with orange juice cans and playing 45 records on the record player while they rolled each other's hair.
Well, you know what? I'm going to get you to hold on right there, and we'll continue the story when we come back, where you're flying in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Is it a dream? Is it reality? Is it a soul adventure? Debbie Jordan-Kauble is an amazing guest tonight with an amazing encounter coming up here. Talk Intruders when we come back on Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we're clear. This is where we can talk.
Okay.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
You know what? It's so weird. When I was about 3-4 years old, I always used to have dreams that I could fly. That all I had to do was flap my arms as a kid. And we lived beside a park growing up. And all the older kids, like my sisters were 7 and 10 years older than me, but my oldest sister always used to believe that there was a monster. They called him the Green Man in the forest. And it wasn't a very big park. It was one of those small parks that kind of divide subdivisions and cul-de-sacs in between. And I never saw anything like that or whatever. But they used to swear by it. And it was just nasty because I always thought there was like a boogeyman. So I remember as a kid, I don't remember any dreams as a kid except for these ones where I would be having to flap my arms because the boogeyman was trying to get me and my cul-de-sac friends. and yeah, it was so weird. And now knowing what I've gone through, a lot of times I've tried and translate those dreams into was that something that happened previously that I was just, my mind as a child was transcribing as a boogeyman, but was something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird.
Yeah. I don't think it's weird at all. Seems pretty normal to me.
True.
Little Coke Zero.
Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary since I drank Pepsi.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you stop drinking Pepsi?
Oh, I was getting fat.
Oh.
I was literally drinking anywhere from 2 to 5 Pepsis a day.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know what water was.
That is a lot of sugar, though.
Yes.
The Coke Zero doesn't have any sugar in it. But Coke Zero Cherry tastes really good.
See, I can't.
And there's zero.
I'm allergic to aspartame.
Oh, my girlfriend's brother, he gets migraines real bad if he drinks anything with that in it.
See, my tongue swells up.
Ooh, that's not good.
No, it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks when that happens. Oh, this isn't nice, Fap. Dave can't fly because Boeing hasn't figured out how to make a plane big enough. Wow. This coming from a guy whose head is so large that people try to crawl into his pockets to see if the helium will take him up. Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of regular people then.
Yes. Some of them like to make fun of me. It's terrible.
Oh, that's not nice.
It's terrible. I mean, some of them like Fap there. He doesn't know that actually hurts my feelings, Hurts.
What does FAP stand for?
I have no idea. All I know is that he's an LA Dodgers fan, so that just says the type of person he is right there.
Yeah.
Yep. We love him around here, though. We love him around here.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it is.
How can anybody be sure? Well, because of the mark in my yard and the neighbors that saw stuff. So that kind of takes the wind out of the lucid dream. I do have lucid dreams. I think that's what they are, but that wasn't one.
Mm-hmm. There you go, Fap, from the lovely and talented Jennifer. You look great, Dave. I know she's being polite. And then with the aspartame, Jennifer, ooh, little weird here. Love a fat tongue, Dave. Oh, my. Oh, my. I love the fact that I could put comments up. Eugene is asking, do you recommend the book or movie version?
Intruders on television was actually a compilation of a bunch of different people's stories. So there's only a couple of scenes that are actually mine. If you want the true, the all my family story, you want to read the book.
All right. Hold on 1 second here. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to say that you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Debbie Jordan-Kauble tonight. Intruders. What is it all about? Now, right before the break, Debbie, you were talking about this amazing story when you were young about flying and seeing your sister curling her hair and listening to 45s. Tell us about that.
Well, I just was out in the yard and everything. The color, the sky was a different kind of a dull color, and there's a breeze, a wind, and something told me if I just put my arms out and leaned into the wind, it would lift me up and carry me to where she was. And it did. And I was in the room, up in the corner of the room, watching her and her friend. And I got very scared. I suddenly got really scared. And thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to float away, and the second I had that fear, I was right back in my room. I woke up in my bed. And years and years later, after the incident that happened on June 30th, 1983, one of the things, I had a period of time after that where I would wake up with these thoughts and images in my head, and I would draw them, write it down or draw them. And one of the thoughts that I had was that fear would slow the process. And it made me think back to that time when I had that happen to me and I got so afraid. And the minute I got afraid, the experience stopped. So,
did you think it was some sort of astral projection that had happened?
I thought I got out of I thought I was in my body flying. At that age, I thought I actually literally flew down there and saw my sister. Later on, when I think about it, I don't think my body flew down there, but I think another part of me did, possibly. A lot of this is just weird stuff that I've remembered and has had happened to me over the years, and I noticed one of the questions was, how can I know that all of the stuff I've experienced isn't just a bunch of lucid dreams? And I told you I have had lucid dreams. I do have two different kinds of dreams, the regular kind and those kind. But like the experience I had in 83 left a mark in the yard that lasted several years, and the neighbors witnessed things. Another experience I had was with two other girls in a car out in the country. So I mean, if every single thing in my whole life had ever been just me and me only, and no physical evidence to support anything, I'm already my biggest skeptic. And every time something weird happens, I always try to find the most reasonable explanation for it. And most of the time I can. But there are those moments that defy explanation of any kind.
Let's go to the incident.
Okay.
Let's lead up to it. Was there anything weird or strange leading up to this major event?
Not particularly. Nothing that stood out. I was at that point a single mom with two little kids, two little toddlers and little boys. And had not too long before that, moved back home with my parents because I got divorced and didn't have a job. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do in my life. God bless my parents for being there and helping us. And but the night that happened, when I first saw that light in the backyard, I was not thinking of aliens or UFOs whatsoever. When I saw that light in the pump house, my first thought was, burglars or, somebody's out snooping around in my parents' yard. And, I was getting ready to go cut some patterns out with the girl that lived behind us, who was a seamstress. She had offered me a little extra money to help my parents with, our food and stuff, by cutting out the patterns for her when she made costumes. And so I was fixing to go over there and cut out some patterns. And that's when I noticed this weird light in the pump house by the swimming pool. And I mentioned it to my mom, before I left. I'm like, Mom, there's something ain't right out there. There's a light out there in the pump house. And she's like, well, maybe you just left it on. Don't worry about it. Your father will be home pretty soon. My dad was working second shift at the Ford Motor Company down there at the time. So he was an electrician there for like 35 years. But so anyway, I said, okay, well, I'll be gone for a while. And I got in the car, and before I left, I decided to go along the side drive of the house that would take me back along the swimming pool. And there's a little turnaround back there by my dad's workshop. And that way, if anyone was back there, I'd be able to see him, just to make sure, because I was leaving my mom there with my babies, So I did, and the light was now out. So I thought maybe my mom might have gone and shut it off when I was getting in my car. But I did note that the door to the garage that was attached to the house, the back pedestrian door, was open, which I knew my dog Penny had been in the garage that night. So I thought maybe she might have got out. Anyway, so when I got to my friend's house a few minutes later, I called my mother and I told her, I saw the light was out. And I said, the back door of the garage is open. Penny's probably loose. And I said, you want me to come home? She's like, no, don't worry about it. She goes, I'm going to lock the doors. Your dad will be home in a little while. Don't worry about it. And so I hung up the phone. And as soon as I hung it up, she called back. And I just snatched it up. I was standing right there with my hand basically still on it. So I picked it back up and answered. It was her. And she said, I need you to come home right now. And I'm like, why? What's wrong? And my girlfriend's husband heard me, and he could tell I was upset or shocked by something. And he's like, tell her to call the police. That's what we pay him for. and my mom heard him, and she says, I don't want anybody here but you. I'm like, okay. So I went back home. I got I went in the Florida room, and I got the shotgun that my dad had that he kept back there by the trash compactor. And my mom was standing there, and she watched me, and I remember her saying, that's not loaded. And I said, I don't care. Whoever I'm going to swat it with it doesn't know it's loaded. So, and I always tell everybody was not a brave person. I am much more of a brave person now than I was then. So it wouldn't be as strange for me to do something like that now. But back then, I have no idea whatever possessed me to go be all, macho woman like that, because that's not me. Anyways, I went back out walking around trying to see if I could see anybody. Still, I'm not thinking about UFOs or aliens, not at all. And didn't see anything. So I decided to go in the garage because I thought if somebody's here, that's where they're hiding. I had discovered my dog under my dad's ladder truck farther back behind the pool, and she wouldn't come out from under the truck for nothing. So I'm like, fine, stay outside. And I went in the garage, didn't see anything, but when I was in there, all of a sudden I felt like I was on fire. It almost felt like I could feel every molecule of my body like on fire. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I got to get out of here right now. So I headed to the pedestrian door. And as soon as I hit that open pedestrian door, something hit me in the chest like a bolt of lightning. I mean, like right in your solar plexus, right in here. And it was so bright and so intense that I know my eyes were closed, but I could still see it. I couldn't get away from it. And I couldn't move. It almost felt like time stopped, and it felt like every molecule in my body vibrated. I could feel each individual piece of me vibrate. And then it seemed like that went on forever, but I know it couldn't have been very long. And the bright light quickly receded, and I was able to open my eyes, but I couldn't see. Everything was real splotchy, like flashbulb splotchies in your eye, in your vision. I could see movement out in front of me. And I could make out what I thought were like 6 children, like small sized, which I thought were kids in my parents' backyard. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? I felt something pull down on the back of my shoulder from behind me. And I felt this intense burning sensation in my right ear. And the next thing I remember is hearing someone say it was unfortunate that I had felt this pain. The next thing I know, I'm outside and on the patio. And that's when I can see this thing in my parents' yard, just off to my left. And it was a kind of deal like where when I noticed it, I didn't want to look at it. Then when it was like I didn't want to look at it because it terrified me. And yet I didn't want to not know where it was at all times in relationship to me, because I didn't want it coming any closer to me. And at that point is when I realized that the kids in the backyard had all lined up and were kind of moving towards this thing. It wasn't very big. It was egg shaped. And I don't even think it was actually touching the ground, because it kind of had a very ever so slight wobble to it, like a bobber on a calm, smooth lake. Just that kind of little, like that. And it had a big like a basketball sized ball of light in front of it. And it was about as high as I am tall and 5'3". And then it went down really slow and then went back up again. And then these kids kind of glided into it. In retrospect, there's no way on the planet that could be any kind of a ship that flew anywhere. Everyone calls it a craft when they talk about it, but I don't know what it was. Even little people, little kid-sized beings, 6 of them aren't flying anywhere in that thing if they're all squished together. I don't know what that thing was I saw in the yard, and I don't know what it was that they went into, but they went into it and they disappeared. And at some point I heard I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, my kids. I started to remember my kids are in the house. And what is this crazy stuff in front of me here? This little ship thing wasn't very big. It was not much bigger than the pump house. And I estimated it maybe at 10 feet at its widest diameter around, and maybe 10 or so feet tall. I mean, it wasn't that big. But at some point I heard my name being called. And as soon as I heard my name, it was like somebody snapped their fingers. And I woke up. The memory of everything that just happened that I just described to you was gone from my mind. I turned and walked up the back. I could move. I turned and walked up the back. I still had the gun in my hand. And there was my mom standing at the top porch in the kitchen. And she says, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, it's cool. But I thought to myself at that point, I don't want to sew anymore. I feel weird and icky and gross, and I want to get wet. And it's, June the 30th. It's almost July. We have this beautiful swimming pool. It's hot out. So I went back to my friend's house and I said, hey, instead of cutting out patterns and sewing tonight, why don't we go swimming? Because the pool was nice and it had lights in it and everything. And so she's like, okay. No mention of how long I'd been gone. Later on, we realized I had actually probably been gone from her house for about an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes. Her and her husband didn't even realize how long I'd been gone. It was like they'd been shut off as well. And
how did you figure out that?
Bud figured that all out afterwards because we placed the time that we came back, how long it took me to get to her house, how long I was there while they grabbed their suits, and changed, then drove back to mom's house. Then we got in the pool, and then my dad shows up. So we knew what time my dad came home from work. So we were able to piece together that approximately there's still at least an hour, maybe 15 minutes of time missing, because we knew what time I left to go to begin with. It's a rough guesstimate, but it showed that there was enough time, that I was gone from her house enough time, and that they knew I was going home because there might be something wrong. But, and you would think logically, okay, if your friend left and they thought there were prowlers at their house and you didn't hear from them for a while, you would call them, or, hey, are you guys okay? That never happened. They didn't do that because they didn't even realize how long I was not there. So we get back to the house, me and her and her daughter. We'll walk across the backyard. Her daughter steps on something in the yard that stings her foot. But then her foot starts to go numb. And because we thought she'd stepped on a bee, but we didn't see anything on her foot or in the grass. It was dark out by then, but, we couldn't see anything on her foot either. And we didn't see anything in the grass. So we're in the pool, and we're only in the pool for a short amount of time until all three of us start getting really sick, nauseous, and my vision became horrible. Everything started having halos over it, and I had a terrific headache. So we thought we might want to go like to White Castle and get some gut bombers or something, but then that was aborted, and they went home, and I went home. I went to bed. And the next morning when I woke up, my eyes were swollen completely shut. They were so bad, and I was in so much pain that my mom took me to the emergency room. And one of the doctors that I saw eventually for this asked me, one of the first things they asked me is, had I looked into the arc of a welder's torch? I'm like, no. First of all, I'm not that dumb, and why would I do that? And why would I be around a welder? All these thoughts in my head. So, but anyway, a few days pass. None of us goes out to the backyard. I don't know why not. It was just me, my mom and dad, and my two little ones. But for the couple of days, nobody really looked out back or went back there. And here comes 4th of July weekend, and the family comes over to go swimming and light off fireworks. And all the kids run out back, and my nephew comes back in, and he goes, Grandma, what's wrong with your yard? And so everybody went out back, and there was that mark. And the first thing out of my mom's mouth was, oh my God, that's where the UFO landed the other night. And I'm like, I looked at her and I thought, what in the hell did you just say? Why on earth would you say something like that? And then I looked back at this mark in the yard, and you could have knocked me over with a feather, because it was like it was like pulling the finger out of the dike. All the memories. All I could see was two big black eyes just laid right over that circle. And at that point, I think I began a 6-month-long nervous breakdown. I kid you not. I could not sleep at night. I stayed up all night long, sitting in a chair between my two little boys. And I could not go to sleep until the sun came up and Mom and Dad were awake. And I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't think. I couldn't eat. I was sick. My eyes were still a wreck and in pain. For like, maybe couple months, there was a bathroom with a window that overlooked that mark in the yard. I couldn't go to the bathroom in that bathroom at night by myself because I was afraid of the window. I'd never been like that before that night. And I got sick. I started running low-grade fevers on and off. I'd get rashes. The glands in my neck would swell up. I'd get stomach problems. I started having palpitations and irregular heartbeats, panic attacks. And the dog that had been out there that night, by I think November, maybe October, she had to be put to sleep because all of her hair started falling out. We first thought it was mange on the back of her body. You know what mange looks like on a dog. But then it started falling off in other places that she couldn't rub it off on. And she started developing big black sores on her back, and her teeth started falling out. Her gums were bleeding. Her eyes looked like white over, and she ended up she was just miserable, and we had to put her down. Don't know why she ended up like that, but thought it was just, she was out there that night and it was weird. I had that whole year was weird. I would have strange dreams, and I would see images and shapes that I would wake up and draw, and words. I'd write down phrases. Like one of them was, the answers are in the blood, stuff like that. Anyway, I had read Bud Hopkins' book, Missing Time. And when I picked it up, I wasn't quite sure exactly what it was about. I flipped through it and kind of got the gist of it. And I thought, okay, this will be interesting because, we're open-minded family. We why not? And I'd seen the Betty and Barney Hill thing on TV, I think. And back in 77, I believe, Dad took us, might have been Christmas Eve of 77. Is that when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Because we used to have a tradition in our family. We'd go to the movies on Christmas Eve when the kids got older. And so I believe that was when we went to see that. And I can remember punching my dad in the arm going, yes, look, yes, that's right. I said, whoever wrote this saw these guys. I got so excited about it, which was kind of weird. But Dad, he's like, shut up. I'm trying to watch the movie. But so I got the book Missing Time. And every time I tried to read it, I'd have these major panic attacks. So much so I think I was having a heart attack, and I would make my mom take me to the emergency room. So after like the third trip in a couple of weeks, she's like, you need to take that book back to the library. We can't keep reading this book. So then after, and it wasn't too long after that the Mark in the Yard incident, June 30th, happened. And I immediately, one of the things that came back to my mind was that book. And I immediately went back to the library and got it because I had remembered seeing that there was a place in the back of the book that you could write to the author if you thought you'd had one of these experiences. And I thought that I took a bunch of pictures of this Mark in the Yard because it was extraordinarily weird. And everything I was feeling and what was happening after that, and my eyes, but my sister, Kathy, my older sister that I told you about earlier, she'd had one episode she talked to us about in 1965. She was taking my mom to a bingo game, dropped her off at the bingo game, drove past Holy Spirit Church, and suddenly felt compelled to pull in the parking lot and drive around back. And when she did, there was a UFO right over her car behind this church.
Wow.
And she remembered this UFO picked up her whole car with her in it.
Wow. On that note, I'm gonna get you to hold on right there because we are getting into some serious juice here, into the story of Debbie Jordan-Kauble. If you want alien stories, what it's like to be abducted, what it's like to have missing time, this is one that we are proud to broadcast to you tonight. Debbie Jordan-Kauble is our guest here on Spaced Out Radio. Hour number 2 of the show coming up right after this. All right, we are clear. I'm just going to disappear here for a minute and take my dogs out. I'll be right back, okay?
Yep, I think I'll go take myself out.
All right. I got your microphone down, so we'll be right back. All right, I am back.
Me too.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry if I talk a lot. There's so much. There's so much. That's why I wrote another book, because so many people wanted to know. And I wanted to get it out of my head and down in case I lost it. My dad died from dementia. My older sister has dementia. I didn't want to lose all this. I want my granddaughter to know. So.
Bear with me here. Okay. We have about 1 minute here. And I want to say a big thank you to Abe, to Ed, to Sinister, and to Andrew for the amazing super chats. Those really help us out here on the show. So thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate the love. Thank you to all our new subscribers, every veteran who listens to this show, and our regulars who are in our chat rooms on a nightly basis. Do you mind if I get you to turn your phone to silent, Deb, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's not my phone, but I'll get it out of here.
All right.
It's my iPad. Some of my friends found out I was awake, and so now they're bombing me.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet called Earth. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Oculiform. Oculiform is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Debbie Jordan-Kauble. Amazing first-hand encounter of what it's like to be abducted, to have missing time, and to have extraterrestrials all of a sudden pop in to one's life. Debbie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So during the right before the break, you were telling us this amazing story of it was now the 4th of July, and there is this circle pattern that is on your grass, and nobody had noticed it. Mom all of a sudden said, "That's where the UFO was the other day." And all of a sudden the memories start coming back. I mean, how emotional was that for you and traumatic, knowing that all of a sudden just popped out of nowhere?
It was horrible. It was horrible. Like I said earlier, I believe now, looking back, I basically had a nervous breakdown. And thank God for my parents who were there and supported me and helped me with my kids for a while, because it took a long time for me to get myself back to normal, some kind of normal, and get out of that. It was horrible. I mean, it was, in retrospect, I don't feel that anything that was done to me that harmed me was done intentionally. I think it was, like a side effect of what happened, but I don't think it was intentional to hurt me. But it did do lasting damage to me. I ended up being diagnosed with cataracts in my 30s. And by the time I was not even 50 yet, I had new lenses. I had to have my lenses in my eyes replaced with, my cataracts were so bad. And I have macular degeneration. So my vision is going. And I blame that night because my eyes were never right after that. And before that, I never had to wear glasses or anything. So, but I think that was, I don't think that was on purpose that I was hurt. It was very frightening, very traumatic time.
You had mentioned in the last half hour that you went to the doctors to get your eyes checked out, and that he had asked if you were, watching someone weld without eye protection, because literally this burnt your eyes. Mm-hmm. How did you explain to him what had happened, or did you?
I didn't, because at that time, I didn't have a conscious memory of that moment, that blast. That was still out of my mind. All of that, like I said, when I heard my name called, bam, that whole chunk of time was just gone from me and from my mind, my conscious mind. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know how that works. I don't know how they can do that, In retrospect, again, like I say, there's a lot of things you can say in retrospect, but what would you tell them? I saw this UFO and bright light in my backyard and now my eyes are blind. But I mean, nowadays, I might be more inclined to do that. But back then, no. But I didn't remember it anyway at that point, the next morning. So I just, had no idea why my eyes were so bad, and neither did he, because he thought they were bad enough that they should have been bothering me, earlier in the day. I'm like, I just woke up this way.
Was there any markings on your chest from that beam or whatever it was that hit you?
No, I don't believe so. Nope. But I know my heart, that's when I started having flip-flops in my heart real bad, which that could be anxiety too. So
do you think, or let me rephrase that. After the 4th of July, what happened? Let's continue the story from there. What happened after the 4th of July? I mean, we know you started staying awake until all hours of the night, waiting for, people to wake up in the morning so you could sleep and feel safe that there was someone watching over you, and you were having a nervous breakdown over this incident. Were your friends whose house you were at, were they going through any type of trauma as well over this?
At the time, I didn't know about it, and they didn't say anything to me about it. Now, when Bud came later, months later, and when he started to come to Indiana and do, the investigation, he came several times. And at one point, he talked to them. They mentioned to him that they were worried about me, but they didn't realize, they were worried about me after the fact when they saw me falling apart, but they didn't realize at the time that much time had passed. And she remembered her, us feeling sick in the pool and me complaining about my eyes. And she told him about her daughter and her foot. But beyond that, no. And also when he, I wrote that letter, and I kind of threw my sister under the bus because I told him her story from 65 first. And, we always assumed that she was telling the truth. She'd get really mad and emotional about it and then quit talking if we picked on her. And so, we believed her. She had no reason to tell us a lie or tell us a crazy story like that. And so I told him about her. And then I said, oh, by the way, this happened on June 30th. And here's like 15 pictures of the yard. And that's he, you know, I don't know how long it was when my mom finally mailed the letter, but it was maybe a couple months or so after June that he called. And from that point on, for like 3 years, he investigated. I went to New York a few times. He came to our house. He talked to people. He talked to my friend who I was cutting patterns with that night. He also talked to the neighbors and walked around to the neighbors, and he found a couple interesting things. One, the neighbor lived directly next to my mom, reported on or around that time, that date, that she had seen a bright flash come from my parents' backyard, and her house shook, and her television screen went red, and all her clocks stopped, and she panicked, and was, I guess, when her husband came home from work, she was hiding behind a couch or something. I can't exactly remember. I know that her husband told Bud that when he got home, she was beside herself, hysterical because of what had happened in our backyard. And she didn't see a UFO or think it was that. She thought something had maybe, blown up, or somebody was trying to break in something and blew something up. And then the other gal that lived diagonally across the street, she was an emergency room nurse who had a weird work hours. So she was actually asleep at the time and was going to be getting up to go to work. And she reported to Bud that she was awakened by the sound of what she said sounded like a jet airplane about to crash into her house. And her whole house shook, and the clocks in the front part of her house stopped. Weird stuff. And then come to find out, when he went down about 2 houses on the other side and talked to the neighbors down there, there were some kids there that we went to actually school with. They didn't report having seen anything that night, but they told him they'd seen things over my parents' house other times. And they were too afraid to come tell us. They didn't know what it was, and they didn't want us to think they were crazy. I'm like, really? So there were more than, just me and Mom involved in this thing. And then to add to that, like 20 years later, Bud gets a letter from a woman who lived the house directly behind my mom and dad's house on the next street. And she says that she couldn't pinpoint, she couldn't say for sure the exact date and time, but she thought it was around the same general time. Her boys used to like to spend the night with their friends, and they'd sleep out in the garage. And the garage opened up and actually faced towards Mom's house, but there was woods in between their house and our house, wooded area. And she said one night the boys came running in screaming bloody murder, that there were basketball-sized balls of white light floating through the woods, and it scared them. And they didn't want to go back outside to the garage. And they saw multiple of these balls of white light floating around the garage. And that night, I said, I saw a small ball. I saw one ball, basketball size, drift down and then back up again in front of me. And my mother, like a week later, Mom says, oh, I remember why I called you to come home now. Remember when I called you to come home that night? She said she was standing at the kitchen table, or at the kitchen sink, looking out the window, and there's a bird feeder right outside the window. She said there was about a basketball-sized ball of white light that illuminated this bird feeder. And she thought maybe it was like from somebody's flashlight beam, or somebody had pulled in that side drive I spoke of earlier, and it was a headlight. And so she's like trying to, look and see if she could see somebody or a flashlight or something like that. And she said the light got smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappeared. And she said the minute it disappeared, that's when it came in my head that I needed to call you because you needed to come home. I'm like, well, okay, thanks for telling me now. I mean, that was kind of freaky, but so.
Getting a lot of questions in the chat room. Where in Indiana did this take place?
Indianapolis.
Or Indianapolis. Okay. So That's a major city that this is happening in.
Mm-hmm. And we weren't that far from, it was the suburbs, but it wasn't that far from downtown Indy. Maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes max, depending on traffic. So yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, but that was in Indianapolis. Yep.
Okay, so you have this going on, and now Bud Hopkins is involved. For people who may not know or recognize the name of Bud Hopkins, define for us who he is.
Bud Hopkins was one of the first people to seriously investigate the abduction phenomenon. He was actually an artist. He wasn't a scientist or a doctor or anything like that. He was an artist, but he'd had an experience of his own, not a close encounter like mine, but he and some friends on the Cape had witnessed a UFO in the sky, and it piqued his interest. I always used to say, you had to have something more than that happen to you for you to be this interested in it. You know what I mean? This driven. Nope. He swear to God, he never did. But so he was an artist who had an experience and was fascinated with it, and extremely intelligent man, very well spoken, well written. And the thing about him was, at least, when I met him, he would reach out to professionals in the field, medical field, and psychology, and ask for assistance, and he would show them this compelling stuff that he'd gotten he got a bunch of letters from that Missing Time book. I remember him in his art studio when I went to New York the first time. There were boxes and boxes and boxes, like just jam-packed full of letters from people from this book alone. And so he enlisted the aid of physicians and psychiatrists and people that would help him to help people like me. He was a very compassionate person, and he wanted to help people. I always say he was in the emergency room of the UFO abduction phenomenon, because he saw the train wrecks like me in the beginning, and it was hard on him because he wanted to help people. He was a good guy, and he was smart.
Why did he feel your case was important to come on board and investigate it?
I asked him that one time. When I was in there looking at all those, he was showing me these letters, and then he would show me some that were just like I could have written them. They were so much like me and my own story and my own family. And I was just amazed. And I remember looking up at him and saying, Bud, my letter was in this box with all these other people. Why did you call me? Why did you decide to investigate and research my family and our experiences, and why? And he goes, well, kid, because he used to call me kid, that is the $64,000 question. I have no idea. I said, must have been destiny, huh? And he goes, maybe. Don't know.
What kind of a man was he like to you?
To me, he was like a father figure almost. I mean, I was young. I was in my 20s. And he really was a compassionate and caring person. And my family loved him when he would come to visit. We'd all sit around the kitchen table with coffee, and he had a million stories, not just of UFO stuff, but of art in New York and all kinds of things, and he would just mesmerize you when he'd talk to you. And he and his family, his wife and he made me feel like a part of their family whenever I would come to New York, and would do their best to make me feel comfortable. I remember I had to sell my washer and dryer that I had put in storage to get enough money to buy a bus ticket to go see him the first time. And halfway to New York on the bus, which is a 17-hour bus ride from Indy to New York City, about halfway there, I suddenly had a major panic attack, and I thought, girl, what is wrong with you? You are a mother, and here you are on a bus on your way to New York City to meet a man that you don't know who wrote a book about UFOs and aliens. He could be an axe murderer, what is wrong with you? Go home. You know? And I wanted to jump off the bus and go back home at that moment, but I didn't. And when I got off the bus and I saw him there to greet me at the bus station, he had a bag of muffins and a cup of hot coffee and a warm smile on his face. And, and then my fears went down a lot. And then my first subway ride, the lights went off and I just came out of my skin, and he could sense that I freaked out a little bit, and he patted me on the knee and he said, it's okay. It's okay. It's supposed to do that. That's normal. And when it went that, I knew I was going to be okay, because who does that? Who gets on a bus and goes all the way to New York City? And I'm a girl who was scared to be lost. I had this phobia about being lost. I think it goes back to when I was a little kid. I don't know, but I went everywhere with the compass in my hand, Thank God for cell phones. That was my savior. I loved cell phones so I could never get lost again. Forget about talking to my friends. So, for me to get on a bus and go there, that was a big deal, and that said a lot.
Did you feel,
I was that desperate.
But did you feel, as we got about 3.5 minutes to go before we go to break at the bottom of the hour, Deb, did you feel that there was an array of relief on your end because finally someone was getting what you were saying, somebody who was really taking what you experienced seriously, and even though the answers are very difficult, those answers were at least getting somewhere?
It was a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, all those very things you just said, somebody's finally listening, maybe, even told the psychologist during testing, it's okay if you tell me I'm crazy. I know they make pills for that and I'll feel better. So, I'm okay with that. If that's what this is, I'm good with that. But like when Bud showed me those letters and I read those letters from those people and I saw the drawings that were just like mine, and I never met these people, never talked to them, didn't know them. And it's like there's only one explanation for how they knew this. I know they didn't climb in my head, and get it from me like that. So they had to have experienced it for themselves. And that threw a monkey wrench in my coping skills, because most all of my life, a lot of this stuff I tried to write off as me being, a dream or I'm misinterpreting something or this, that, or the other, in order to function in life. And here I'm getting this confirmation in this, and this people are seeing the same thing I am. So on the one hand, it was a relief. And on the other hand, it made me feel even more anxious in some ways.
All right. Debbie Jordan-Kauble is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. 2 minutes before we need to go to break at the bottom of the hour. One more question about Bud Hopkins, if you don't mind. As he was delving through the information, was he very open with his findings about you?
You mean to me or to other people?
Pardon me, yes. To you?
Yeah, I think so. I believe so. And also he was to other people too. Like I said, he reached out to, he set me up with a psychiatrist in New York City. And he sent me up with doctors in New York City I think it was at Columbia Hospital for some tests and stuff. He was trying to find see if he could find something like mental illness or a brain tumor or epileptics or something like that. So, and he was always, I felt, honest with me about his findings.
Okay. So with him being honest and truthful about his findings, that had to add comfort to you and your family. Did that happen?
Well, yeah. I was fortunate. I had the support of my family as well. A lot of people like me don't, but it was comforting, and I wouldn't say my family was afraid or scared, and I wasn't. The only time I remember feeling more afraid was the first time I came home from New York. For some reason, I felt like I was going to get in trouble. They were going to be mad because I talked to him. And And I felt like a sitting duck sitting in the middle of Indiana. I felt safer in New York City, if you can imagine that.
I bet, except for those who are getting abducted from the skyscrapers of New York. Yes.
I know.
Debbie, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Debbie, Jordan-Kauble, Intruders, what's it like to have aliens come into your life? Have missing time. Take you to places where you don't know, and the answers will never be found. This is reality here on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear.
Drinking time. I bet your
audience is loving it.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
Like they probably all going, man, she's crazy.
No, we got enough wingnuts in here to know that your story is nowhere close to being crazy. Oh, who hasn't had aliens? Who hasn't had aliens?
I don't know what they are. I don't know where they come from. I don't know if they come from another planet. I don't know if they come from some other dimension or they're time travelers, but they definitely aren't from around here.
Well, maybe we'll find out soon.
You know, I'm kind of curious to see what happens in June, but I'm not going to get my hopes up.
Well, I'm going to ask you that coming up here.
Okay.
We will talk about that because, you know, I think for all of us experiencers, we already know that aliens aren't going to be on the table.
No.
You know, and to me, that's a letdown. Good morning. See how we are living. You must be over in the UK, I believe. There's Eric with a K. You know, Debbie, we are Eric's fourth favorite show. We used to be at number 2, then we slid down to 4, then down to 5, but we're back up to number 4. We're number 4. It's true. Howdy, DM. How are you? All right, we've got about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Are you having fun yet?
Yeah. Are you?
I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast. Oh, Mr. Cowley's here. That means we got to sing to him. Mr. Cowley, da, da, da. Welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I have to figure out the rest of the song yet. I haven't planned the words. He likes it, though. Good morning to you, Mr. Cowley. It's usually the time our UK crew wakes up and joins us.
Okay. Yeah, what's it about? 6:30 in the morning there?
Yeah, about 6:30. Adrian Laddams, how are you? Welcome to our chat room from Sydney, Australia. Appreciate that, my friend. DM in Red Deer, she's a rebel. She is a Red Deer rebel. To Jessica, I'm number 3. To Eric, I'm number 4. To Jessica, I'm number 3. Wow. But lately, I've been running first. Okay. All right. We got about 40 seconds. Big thank you to Abe, to Ed, to Sinister Shorts, or Vax, and Andrew for the super chats. It's a great way to help out what we do on this show. Thank you to all of our new subscribers, and thank you to all the veterans out there tuning into our show, and of course all our regulars hanging on out like Steam Train Mark. How's tomorrow looking? Please let us know if we are alive in Australia tomorrow. We'd appreciate that since you live in the future. Gorgeous Tristan, how you been? Good to see you back. Here we go, everyone. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. Really do appreciate each and every one of you finding us wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight talking about ET Contact, Missing Time. Debbie Jordan-Kauble is with us tonight on the show telling her real life experience that was turned into a television series. It was turned into a couple of books. Debbie, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Did the ET Contact continue after this incident?
Yeah, I had a few strange things happen. Even all the way up to about 2005, I started to see what they call O-balls, orange balls of light, here in the town where I live now, which is north of Indianapolis. And I was bound and determined to capture them on video camera. So I would go out to the local parking lot over where they were at and wait for them. And I actually did catch them on video one night, a very bad video clip because I had a crummy camera. But that night, after that, something happened here that went down in history as the Kokomo boom. And it was also, I believe, the same night or the same week that Stevensville had a big sighting in that same time frame, mass sighting. And just, I'd meet strange people. I'd have strange encounters with odd people. And for a while after the June 30, 83 incident, I'd say for a couple of years anyway, we had really weird encounters with black helicopters. And I got lots of photographs of them. And it was so bad sometimes that my neighbors would call to check on us to see if we were okay. And when I was a clerk at a village pantry one night overnight, the local police officers would stop and make sure I was all right, because these things would just literally fly in circles around. And I don't know what that was all about. I called the airport. I called Fort Harrison, and to complain. And they told me that helicopters with no numbers on them don't exist. And I'm like, I have a bunch of pictures. Would you like to see them? And I don't know what purpose that would serve, because you're obviously not trying to covertly watch someone, because you're like flying all over shaking their windows and making their kids and dogs scared, So what was that all about? My older sister even reported driving home from somewhere in the country. It was during the day, and a black helicopter swooped down right above her car and literally followed her for several miles along the road as she drove. Have no idea why or what that was about. We assume it's connected to this phenomenon for some reason or another, mostly because other people who've had the experiences like we've had have also encountered these black helicopters. But that didn't last. That was only a couple of years, and that stopped. So,
do you recall any other UFOs coming around?
Yes. And it was after 80, I think, let's see, when was this? April of 84, maybe. I was doing my crazy thing, being a night owl, and I decided I was doing myself a manicure, and I decided I needed fingernail polish remover at like 11 o'clock at night. So I jumped in my car and went off to the store to pick some up and hopefully hurry get there before they close. And on the way back home, driving down the road towards the house, I see a really bright light coming towards me. And first it looked like, when an airplane has got its landing lights on, one light, and it's super bright and it aimed right at you. So it's like really intense. But then it suddenly became 2 lights and then 3 lights in a row, really bright. It was very low and they were really big, and it was kind of gliding right towards Mom's house. And I hurried up and scurried down the road, pulled in the driveway, ran into the house, hollered at my mom, "Come out here, you got to see this." And she came out on the front porch with me. And just as she did, we could see these 3 blazing headlights sailing just above the treetops. This thing was so huge. My parents' home and neighborhood was all wooded, but there was like a open space, around the house and the swimming pool area in the back, and then trees all around. This thing was so big that it literally filled up that whole sky. And the lights in the front went out just as you could see it coming clearing the area above the house. And underneath of it, these lights came on that were so intense and kind of beautiful in a way. And it came on with an audible sound that you could almost feel like a whoop when they just came on. It was like bands of bright white neon, like the fluorescent light tubes, like those long lights. There was a red light in the center at the front underneath, small red light. Didn't flash that I recall, which is the red light. Mom didn't really see anything but the 2, what looked like a boomerang, the 2 front part. I saw, because I was on the porch before she came outside and the lights came on, I could see a dark silhouette of like a square box and maybe something small and pointy behind it. But for the most part, it was just the big giant 2 wing things like a boomerang that lit up. And I remember as soon as it got over us and it lit up, I felt that terror rise in me again, that fight or flight, like, oh my God, I'm going to die kind of terror. And I looked over at my mom, and here my mom is standing there with her mouth hanging open going, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful." And I'm like, "Girl, really?" I was so freaked out that I left her standing on the porch and I ran through as this thing passed over the house, I ran through the front door, through the house and out the back door to see it coming over the back of the house. And it got a couple miles over, a little bit to the east and south of the house. And instead of making a banking turn, which you would think a big, low, slow-moving aircraft would make this big, wide banking turn, this thing just went boop, flip, and started heading in the other direction. Slow, low, and dead silent. Not one peep of sound came out of this huge thing. So I'm thinking to myself and talking to my mom, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be on all the news. I mean, we're in Indianapolis. It's not a little town. Somebody else had to see this thing. It was huge. And I couldn't believe it when there was no mention of it on the news, on radios, in the print, nothing. Of course, I called Bud, because this was right after Bud had made contact with us, and we were talking to him on the phone. I called him. And Indiana MUFON, at the time, MUFON was not interested in abduction cases whatsoever. So they didn't want to talk to us. So Bud contacted J. Allen Hynek up in Chicago. Dr. Hynek and I spoke to my mom and I on the phone. And he asked us to draw pictures of what we'd seen separately, which we did. And we sent them to him. And he called my mom back. I didn't speak to him again, but my mother did. And I remember my mom telling me that I don't remember anything that she said he said, or what was going, nothing happened after that. He got the information, and our sighting was probably put in a registry somewhere, where he kept them. But she did say that he told her that he felt, after all the years of his own research, he was beginning to think that not everyone could see these things. Not everyone was capable of seeing these things, because that would be the only way to explain the fact that Mom and I saw it. It was huge. But why didn't anybody else in this town with, millions of people not notice it? Or maybe they just did and didn't know who to tell and were too afraid to speak about it. I don't know.
Wow.
If you want to see these pictures of these things I've drawn, and the drawings that my mom and I did, and drawings and photographs from the mark in the yard and everything, you can go to my website. They're all put up there for everybody to see.
What's your website?
It's called debshome.com.
debshome.com. All right. I just put that in our chat room. And I got a couple questions from our audience here, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Is asking, Debbie, do you recall any smells or other sensory info from your abduction?
Yes. Smells. Something sulfury, like matches, and a little sweet. And hearing high-pitched tone in my ear or head. I don't know. And of course, there's been times when I've had almost like how you get a tingly sensation and you get goosebumps and stuff like that kind of adrenaline rush kind of tingle, but it'll come out of the blue with no stimulation whatsoever. And, I've had stuff like that, but yes, definitely smell for sure. Yeah. Kind of a sweet, sulfury smell, like matches, only a little sweet.
All right, let's get to another question. This one from Joe. When the aliens announce themselves to the world, will people be able to sue for injuries that occurred during their experimentation? What do you think?
I don't know. Probably not. But if so, sign me up. If there's a class action lawsuit somewhere, sign me up. I got new eyeballs. They can pay for those.
Ange in Australia is asking you, do you get the vibrations through your body?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel things.
Did you ever go through any type of hypnosis to see what actually happened, or are you not wanting to go down that road?
I have had hypnosis sessions. I've had about 5 maybe. 2 of them were with that psychiatrist, Dr. Clamar. Didn't really, not much came from them. And the rest of them were with Bud. And every time I had a hypnosis session, it was recorded, and there was someone else in the room with him. But I never really remembered a lot of stuff while I was under hypnosis. But hypnosis for me seemed to be like, I'd have a session and might remember 1 or 2 small details that I'd forgotten. But then like a week or 2 later, things would start coming back. And I could remember sitting at the table with my mom, and we would be talking, and all of a sudden I would remember this weird thing that happened, a few years ago. And I'd tell her, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe we forgot that. So it seemed like hypnosis kind of loosened things up in me that helped relax or to release these memories, gradually. It didn't all just blast out at once.
Right. Okay. So for the memories that you do have from the feelings, have you ever had, outside of your eyes, any other types of recurring issues, injuries, health issues since then?
Oh my God. It's funny you should ask. I just recently had the second surgery since January for masses of webbing and scar tissue in my abdominal cavity that twisted around my intestines and my organs, and they had to be removed and released, which is very similar to my hysterectomy in 92. When I had that, the doctor's specific words to me were, "You are trashed inside." My ovaries were the size of green olives and wrapped in scar tissue so tightly that they were crushed, and my uterus had grown to my bladder, and just like I had this like mass. My surgeon said the second time he went in, I just had major surgery 2 weeks ago for this more of it to be removed. He said from the navel down, I was just one large organ, one mass. And he said people do that. People do have adhesions and scar tissue, but he had never seen anything like this, ever. He still has big saucer eyes when I go in and see him. When he looks at me, he's like, dang. So, I mean, I can't say that's why, but it's really weird. And also I have a very rare condition called fibromuscular dysplasia in my renal arteries, in which my renal arteries grow spider webs, again, that webbing thing, inside the arteries, attach themselves to the arterial wall, and then pull the arteries closed. I had 5 renal aneurysms that had to be balloon angioplastied because of this condition that's extremely rare. So I'm thinking spider webs in my webbing in my renal arteries, webbing in my abdominal cavity. What is up with that? And then the eyeball thing. So wow. I don't know. It's weird, but I mean, it's weird.
All right. In regards to your own mental health, do you think this is something that will ever go away? Do you think this is something that will be with you forever, and you don't know when the next time it's going to happen? Are you always looking over your shoulder?
Well, I'll tell you what. This toothpaste ain't going back in the tube. But it's a part of me. I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't not have experienced any of it now, because through it all, I've become who I am, and I'm a good person, and good things have happened to me. And at the end of the day, I have to think, yeah, it was traumatic and scary and frightening and maybe physically harming to me in some ways. But it's who I am. It's what I am. It's why I'm here. So I wouldn't change anything. And I fully expect it to continue on. it has morphed into not as physical of an encounter as it is now, maybe a psychic or spiritual encounter. Psychic, being, I have these vivid dreams, these lucid dreams that I remember things in. And, but I don't think that's ever going to change or go away, because I am who I am.
I have a
And that's
question.
okay.
I have a question coming from Shadow Time here, and they are asking, ever think that they might have been military abductions, my labs?
Well, I certainly don't think all of them have been, but I did actually have an experience with humans in a place that did not look, it looked like a hospital. And the interaction I had with this man I called the doctor, and he was completely human. And I would right now, or now he'd probably be in his 90s, because it's been that long ago, because he was probably in his 60s, at least, late 60s when I encountered him. But he had white hair, all gray, ruddy face, and a nose that reminded me of like W.C. Fields in a way. But he had a very deep, loud voice with a southern drawl. And I was in a place where they cut my hair and scraped my nails and scraped my arms and took blood from me. And at one point, the ear that I got poked in on the June 30, 1983 incident, he stuck something like long tweezers in my ear and said, "You got a bug in your ear, little girl. We're going to take that out and you're going to feel a lot better." And I remember he pulled something out and he showed me, and it looked like a bug with legs, like a mosquito, like only with a smaller body and a lot of legs. But then all the legs like drew up and pulled away. And then it was like just a little ball. And then he kind of, I looked at it and I'm like, wow. And he kind of chuckled and he said, "I don't know why I'm telling you this or showing you this, because you're not going to remember any of it anyway." And I said, "I'll always remember this. I'll never forget you." And the next thing you know, I wake up somewhere else. But I didn't forget him, and I didn't forget that.
So how many times do you think you have been taken?
You think that I can remember 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 or 6 that I remember, maybe 5. I don't know for sure how many, I mean, it hasn't been an extraordinary amount. I mean, I've heard people say they've been taken like 1,000 times and they get taken every day or every week. It's not like that for me. It's been over the course of my life in big chunks. Maybe a little more. I don't know. It's like 2 a.m. now, and my brain isn't working like it usually does. And that's questionable sometimes now at my age. So,
well, we only have a couple minutes before we have to go to break at the top of the hour here. Do you want these experiences to continue? Is this something that you need more in order to try and track down what has happened to you over the years?
I would like for them to, because now I'm older, wiser, more calm. I'm more ready. I'm like, I want to know. I want to know what's going on. What is this? What does this mean? Not just for me, but for everybody, Yeah, I would like for it to. I don't see why. I mean, it's part of me. So I think it will.
What do you want to happen again?
I would like, I would tell him, I would like for them to come knock on my door and say, "Hello, can we come in?" And come in and sit down and talk. I never had the presence of mind to ask questions. All I was worried about then was not dying, that thing. But now I think I could ask questions, and I'd like to ask questions.
See, me, I want a flight. I don't want none of this nighttime stuff where you don't know if it's dream or not. I want to walk out of this studio one night, walk into my backyard. For people who don't know, I have a radio studio in my house. And I want to go into my backyard, see the ship parked on my backyard because I got a nice landing pad back there. And I want to walk up to it and take off. Why do
I want him to come. I want him to come and do. I want to come and talk to me, and I want him to do it in front of like a jillion people, so everybody knows and everybody sees. You know what I mean? And come and talk to all of us. I don't know if they'll talk. You know,
who
come
knows?
In my head. Who knows?
We have Debbie Jordan-Kauble for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. More about ET abductions. What does the current state of ufology say about experiencers like her? What does she think about it? We'll find out when we come back in a jam-packed hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we are clear. I'm just going to step away for a minute. I'll be right back, okay?
Yep.
All right. Go like that. All right, I am back. Let me just get my headphones on. All right. A lot of the one thing for my YouTube chat room, a lot of the wrenches were added to help get rid of all of those trolls that we had in here the other night. And so if it happens again, I will add again. But I don't want too many wrenches in here because for a lot of people, the wrenches kind of scare a lot of people off. So that's the only reason. So please, nobody take offense to it. And I hope I haven't pissed anybody off, but that's just the way it is. All right, we got about a minute left. I want to say a big thank you to Abe, to Ed, to Sinister Vax, and Andrew for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our listeners who are tuned on in, all of our regulars in the chat rooms, all the veterans tuned in, and our brand new subscribers checking us out. We really do appreciate each and every one of you coming on in. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, do so at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio Show on Instagram. We'd love to see you added there as well as we continue to build our family here. We're going to get going here in about 7 seconds, so let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the start of hour number 3.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Oculiform. Oculiform is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Debbie Jordan-Kauble. Yes, if you've heard about the Intruders, you know all about her story. And Debbie, I want to bring you in here because there was quite a lot of media hype around this. Not only from Bud Hopkins, but CBS did a story on your incident into a mini-series. What was that like for you to make the incident go that public right across the world?
It was weird. And frankly, Bud had to do some convincing to get my family to agree to a book, period, to begin with. And then I ended up being I took one for the team. I was the one that was the public face with it afterwards. You know, Bud went around and talked about, he did the lecture circuit with the books and the book circuit, you know, when it came out. And I went with him because I felt, you know, this man gave 3 years of his life and spent all his own money trying to help me and my family. I could do this for him and help him with this in appreciation and wanting to help other people as well. That was what convinced me eventually to agree to it, and the family to agree to it, was that maybe it would help other people to feel more comfortable talking about it. Now, I did use a pseudonym in the beginning, but that's because I had little kids and we were already having strange people come to our house before the book was even written. So to avoid things like that, we felt it best to kind of try to, have some privacy while we told her story. Eventually, I wrote my own books, and I feel like I can't expect people to take me seriously. I won't even use my real name. I can't do that anymore. My kids are grown. So, and the miniseries, I was surprised when that happened. And I think Bud was too. I was actually surprised that all of it happened. And Bud's book was a New York Times bestseller for a while. And it's like, what is this happening here? And, but the miniseries, while I was happy that it was done and it was done nicely, back in that time, to have something done like that wasn't full of goofy laugh tracks and corny music was something. And this was serious with real actors that cared. Mayor Winningham actually called me 2 or 3 times to ask me how she should play a certain, scene, how I felt during the scene. I mean, she really cared to try and do it correctly. The thing I did not like about the Intruders miniseries was that half the stuff in it wasn't even things that I had experienced. What they did was they took the name of the book Intruders, because it was the New York Times bestseller, and they took a couple, 2 or 3 key scenes, but from the book, but everything else was a compilation of other people's experiences that real people and real experiences, but compiled into these fictional characters. There were people in there that I was interacting with that in real life I didn't even know, didn't have people like that in my life. And it was hard for me later when I did go out and speak publicly about it. First thing people would come up to me and do was talk to me about the miniseries. And I was happy that it brought awareness in a serious way to this whole subject. But then they'd ask me things and I'd have to say, I'm sorry, but that wasn't me. So I can't answer you. I don't know, that didn't happen to me. And then I'd have to explain all that to him that I just explained to you. I'm hoping that someday, if somebody does it again, they do it and they use the name Intruders. They do it about us and don't mishmash. Hollywood takes a lot of license with things because they want to sell a movie, or a miniseries or whatever. And it was done well. Don't get me wrong, and I appreciate that, but it just wasn't all me, all us.
For your children, you mentioned now that your children are older, that it's a little bit easier to talk about. Are they experiencers too? Did this carry over to them?
Well, you know what? I had boys. I had all boys, and they had stuff when they were little. But now my oldest son doesn't want to talk about it at all. It makes him very uncomfortable. My youngest son, he has seen some things, but he hasn't reported to me anything like what I went through. And he's had some paranormal activity happen to him as well. But this, I have one granddaughter, and she is my mini me. And she's brilliant and beautiful, and I think she looks like me. But when she was about 4 or 5 years old, for a period of about 6 months, no, about 3 months, she had night terrors, and she would tell her father that aliens were coming through her bedroom and were trying to take her. And my son was so mad at me. He called me up furious and accused me of telling her about this stuff, which absolutely did not do. My husband and I even would change a channel when it would come on TV. No, she got no exposure from us. That was a rule in our house. We didn't talk about this around the kids because we didn't want to scare them or contaminate their memory in case they had stuff happen to them. He went through this thing where he had to put like a cover over her window, got her a nightlight, got her a radio, made alien ant go away spray out of Glade room freshener. They put a label on with the alien face with a big slash through it, and he would spray it in her room at night, tell her that this would make them go away. And after about 3 months, it ended. Okay. Never spoke about it again. She's 14 now, going to be 15 soon, and was spending some time with me not too long ago. And she looked over at me. We were watching TV and Ancient Aliens commercial come on. And she said, she looked over at me. She calls me Nini. She said, Nini, do you believe in aliens? And I said, yep. That's all I said. Didn't say anything else. She says, good, because so do I. I just smiled at her. She smiled at me, and we didn't speak anymore on that. So I'm like, she's the girl. And in my family, it seems as if the girls are the ones who were affected. It was my mother. It was my older sister. It was me. Now it appears to be my granddaughter, but not my brother, not my dad, not my sons so much. So I don't know.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
How about for your husband?
My husband, when I first met him, I was a widow when I met him, and we've been married 25 years now. But the book was out, and this was public. And when I met him, I thought, oh, I got to tell him about this. I can't not hide this. This is a big part of my life. It's a big part of me and my whole family. So I gave him Bud's book, Intruders, or Missing Time. And then I gave him Intruders. I said, read Missing Time first, then read Intruders. And then if you still want to go out on a third date with me, give me a call. I thought, I ain't never going to hear from this guy again ever in my life. Not a chance. And a week goes by, and I'm like, damn, I really like that one too, man. But then the phone rang one night, and it was him. And I said, oh my God, I'm so happy you called. I said, did you read the books? And he goes, I certainly did. I'm like, here we go. And he said, well, I said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I'll tell you, I know you well enough now to know that you're not crazy. I don't believe you're a liar. So the only other option is this stuff was really happening. And I want to know more. I'm like, all right. And 6 months later, we were married, and we've been married we just had our 25th wedding anniversary.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. How about that?
I want to ask you, because this is important to many of us who are experiencers of this phenomena. And that is June 25th. The report is supposed to come out from the Pentagon. And we don't know. It may come out earlier. It may be delayed. There's a lot of speculation as to what is going to happen here over the next little bit. So my question to you is, as we go forward, as an experiencer, how are you looking at this June 25th date for the release of the UFO files?
Well, I'm not holding my breath. But there was a little tiny part of me when all these videos started coming out, and this was going to happen, this June 25th thing, and all these videos started coming out. And there was a little tiny part of me that felt some vindication, like, yes, finally, somebody's listening. They're not laughing anymore. But I mean, it didn't escape my, I noticed they changed the name from UFO to UAP, and I'm pretty sure that was probably to steer away from the entire ufology community, and try to shoo that away. And that first of all tells me a little something. And second of all, they're not going to touch the alien abduction part of this, not with a 10-foot pole. And while I think there'll be a lot of backpedaling, I think that it's probably too late for that. I mean, because they did this before. I mean, this has happened before. Back in Roswell, they said something and then they said, "Oh no, wait a minute, that's not what that was." And it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't likely try to do that again. But I think people are more savvy now, and young people asking more questions, and I'm very happy about that. So hopefully it will at least come out that those, whatever it is they're seeing is worth continuing to look at. The
one thing that I always argue with people, and I take a lot of heat over this, Debbie, is when you've never had an experience, UFOs are never aliens. But when you've had a close encounter, when you've had the extraterrestrial contact and or abduction or missing time, and you get some sort of recall, understanding what has happened, it's always aliens. Always. I'm not going to ask whether you agree or disagree with my statement, but do you find that the argument about unexplained aerial phenomena is just scratching the tip of the iceberg in order to maybe keep the calm in this subject for those who either may be A, freaked out, or B, have never given it a passing thought?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I also feel like even myself, not everything I've encountered has been. I don't think they're all aliens. I feel some things that I have had contact with were either extra dimensional or even maybe from our own future, So I think that's more than just aliens. And I'll be curious to see if they mention anything like that, which I kind of doubt, but that's what I think.
There's so many different ways. There's so many ways that we could go with this, because here's the other thing too. I really do believe that there are people in the know. They can't know. I think they've been playing a lot of stupidity and the stupid card, in the statements that have been made. For instance, when you hear someone go up on camera and say, look, we don't know what these are. We don't know where they're coming from. Or the Navy from the United States stating that, we never tracked this stuff before. And now we're going to start tracking it. I mean, They've had 70 years plus to be in the know. Mm-hmm. They've had 70 years of crash retrievals. They've had 70 years to think up a really, really good story as to how to lie about this if it ever came out. Because in the end, they're having to save their own asses on this one. They really are. But for us who've experienced the unknown, where it's taken things to a whole different level, we're going to be ripped off. We're going to be ripped off because we are not going to get the full truth. We're only going to get a partial truth in order to make sure that the markets don't crash, that people don't go shooting their guns in the air, that people don't go crazy. And call me a fearmonger or whatever. I know there's other people who don't agree with me out there. I'm quite fine by that. But there's a lot of plausible dangers to this subject coming out. And I think if you throw aliens into it, that's a whole different kettle of fish that people aren't ready for. What's your thoughts?
I think people are more ready for it now than they were 70 years ago. But I don't think I think there's some people that are never going to be ready for it, no matter what, even if they land in their front yard. I just feel like, from my view 30 years ago and my view now, it is different. People are different. And I think that people would be more, if you'd asked me this 30 years ago, I'd have said, the financial system will collapse. It'll completely wreck everybody's religious beliefs. Just nothing will be, the same. People can't deal with it. But I think now, I do think that the younger generation is a lot more open-minded than my generation was. And I think that eventually, I think they would be more, I think that the government saying that we got to hide this because people will go crazy and everything. I don't think people are will go as crazy as they think they will. I think part of it is they just want to continue to keep everybody under their control, So, but I don't think the phenomenon won't allow it. Eventually it's going to do what it wants to do, whether our governments like it or not, and nobody will be able to stop them.
Do you think that the phenomena wants disclosure?
Part of me wants to say yes, but I don't know if I'm just saying that from my own point of view because of myself and the changes in me. And maybe that's what I want, you know. But I think it's going to be what it's going to be. And nobody, I mean, it's going to get to a point now. Look what's coming out right now. It's going to be a whole lot more than that coming out. And it's just going to be like, pulling the finger out of the dike, and the floods are just going to come, and then you're not going to be able to put that water back in that hole anymore.
So as an experiencer, for those whom you have talked to who are, you know, because everybody's talking about this subject now. How can you not? Mm-hmm. It's all over mainstream media.
I know.
What do you tell the people around you that may have frowned about this subject for years and now coming to you and saying, really, is this really real?
My dude, have you not been listening to me for the last 40 years? You know, I mean, yeah, it's real. Yeah, it's really real. There's stuff out here in this world that life has a way of putting blinders on people. Some people go their whole life and never even look up. You know, I think it's going to have a whole lot of people looking up and seeing, and then they're going to come to people like you and me, and they're going to ask us, what do we do? How do we live with this? And that's when we come in and we show them, look, you can live with this. I do. It'll be okay.
Do you think the world is ready? I know you believe some people are ready, but do you really truly believe that the world is ready?
If I think about the entire whole world and everybody on it, I don't think, I think this has happened before, and I don't think the whole world was ready for it. So, I mean, the people that are able to adapt and adjust to every situation will be the ones that will make it through good, whatever comes our way. The ones that don't. I mean, I feel like part of the reason why I'm here is to try to help people's minds open up and be more accepting of things and trusting of their own instincts and guts. You know what I mean? I mean, that was one of the reasons I spoke up about because I wanted to help people. And that's why I'll be trying to do that till the day I stop breathing.
I don't blame you. We have 2 minutes to go here before we have to say goodnight to you. What's your message to all of those people out there who may be concerned or wanting to learn about UFOs or ET contact?
Well, I'm with you. I mean, I want to learn as much as I can. I'm still learning every day about it. And I'm good. Keep your mind open. Keep looking up. Don't be afraid. I mean, good God. I honestly, the whole threat thing kind of gets under my skin, because if these people are that, if this life is that advanced, we'd have been gone a long time ago. If they had bad intentions, I'm not too worried about that. So just keep your mind open, your eyes open, and, and don't be afraid.
That's the big one. Don't be afraid.
I know. And trust me, it took me like 55 years to figure that out and learn how to do that. But I think I've done it pretty well.
Well, with 1 minute to go, could you let everybody know where they can find your book?
Hopefully it'll be out in the next week or so. And it's called Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders. And it will be available on Amazon and Books A Million. It'll be available on Kindle and all the electronic prints. And you can find the links for it at my website. You can also find the links for it when it's available at August Night Press, because that's my publisher. And in it, I try to share more of my life and stuff. And there's pictures in there. And also you can get Missing Time and Intruders. They are now out again. at same places. And August Night Press, you can find links to that. Those are must-have books if you're a serious ufologist or if you've had experiences.
For sure. Debbie, I want to say a big thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. An absolute pleasure to have you here. It is a great story, a great experience, and I hope you continue to educate people the way we need. Thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire. We have the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Great job, Debbie.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
I always feel like I didn't do enough or say something right, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I thank you so much for allowing me to spend 2.5 hours with you.
Oh, that was amazing. That's good radio. That's the type of story as to why I do this.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you have a good night. I have to go prepare for the news. So I will let you get to sleep, if you don't mind. Thanks, by the way, for looking like a younger version of my mom. I appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
I'll
send Mom love.
Yes, thank you. She needs it right now. She needs it right now. Her health isn't too good right now. So
bless her heart.
Yes.
I'll keep her in my prayers.
Thank you. But all the best to you, and please stay in touch.
I will. You do the same.
Will do. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a beautiful, beautiful lady. Beautiful lady. Love it. Love it. That's a good show. That's a good show. Dry Toast, the best name in ufology. Well, on YouTube at least. Love that name. Love that name. Thanks, Stephen Edmond. Thanks, Polar Eclipse. Appreciate that. Love putting your comments up, by the way. Hey, Chris Mo. What's happening? Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. All right, let's make sure I got this all set up. We broadcast into that area, Manuel. I believe we do. With KZFX radio. Good night, Susan. Yes, Manuel, that is the big Greada Treaty. If it happened or not, we do not know. We can only assume. Excuse me. Bonjour, Julien. Thank you to Vinster, Abe, Ed, Sinister Vax, Andrew for the amazing super chats tonight. You all get a thumbs up from Dave. A thumbs up. Thank you to all our veterans listening in. Thank you to our regulars in the chat rooms. We love you. And here we go. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. And we want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, and this is how it ends. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the hippie lettuce. Amazon wants to see recreational marijuana used legalized across the United States and at the federal level, according to a new blog post by Dave Clark, the CEO of Amazon's consumer side business. You know why? They want to get into the pot business, and they can't. That's why they know they are sitting on billions upon billions more, and they can't get into shipping the devil's goods all over America. The company will also stop drug testing for weed, according to Clark, and treat cannabis like mainstream employers already treat alcohol. Presumably, that means you shouldn't do it on the job, but go ahead and have a doobie in your own home after work hours. Amazon said in the post, in the past, like many employees, we've disqualified people from working at Amazon if they tested positive for marijuana use. However, given where state laws are moving across the country, we've changed course. We will no longer include marijuana in our comprehensive drug screening program for any positions not regulated by the Department of Transportation, and will instead treat it the same as alcohol use. We will continue to do impairment checks on the job and will test for all drugs and alcohol after any incident. But it gets better. The blog says, and because we know that this issue is bigger than Amazon, our public policy team will be actively supporting the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2021, federal legislation that would legalize pot at the federal level, expunge criminal records, and invest in impacted communities. We hope that others will join us and policymakers will act swiftly to pass this law. How about that? I'm telling you, this is a complete setup because somebody in one of those board meetings said, We got to get in the marijuana business. We can make billions more for our shareholders. We got to get some doobies out across the United States. We got to get these Republican states and these Democrat states to finally say, hey, smoke up, boys. Let's make this stuff happen. Let's be more like Canada in this way. Not Trudeau way, marijuana way. There we go. All right. So one of the best haunted tourist attractions is in a little bit of trouble right now. In the 85 years since its maiden voyage, the RMS Queen Mary has survived rogue waves, transatlantic crossings, and even a world war. For the last 5 decades, though, it has enjoyed a second life docked in Long Beach, riding waves of popularity in tough times as a tourist attraction. But this historic ship is now facing the most challenging voyage yet. After years of neglect by a string of operators, the Queen Mary is so creaky and leaky that it needs $23 million in immediate repairs, according to a trove of court documents and inspection reports released last month. There is growing concern that if something is not done soon, the ship could actually fall into critical disrepair and be in the danger of sinking. The Queen Mary has long struggled as a tourist attraction, in part because of the inherent costs that come with maintaining such a large vessel. Its struggles led to a variety of failed proposals that would have sent it to Canada, New Zealand, and even back to England. In 1992, the city fought a plan to move it to Hong Kong. In 1997, a promoter proposed sailing it to Japan for a few years as a way to raise money for repairs. The city rejected that idea too. At one point, Disney eyed the Queen Mary as the center of an oceanside theme park, but that plan fell through as well. The city's been trying to get the Queen Mary right for 40-plus years. Long Beach Mayor Robert Garcia said during a news briefing, "It's been from one leaseholder to the next. It has not succeeded to the point where there has been the right partner and the right preservation plan in place. Queen Mary's current state of disrepair is extensive. Structural steel is corroded, the bilge system is aging, the hull is compromised, and leaks and safety hazards abound, according to an April 28th inspection by city-hired marine engineering firm Elliott Bay Design Group. Docked in Long Beach since 1967, the ship is a long-time tourist attraction, hotel, and history buff destination that retains strong support from city leaders, including Garcia, who recently said it was important to preserve the ship's presence in the port city. But nobody seems willing to pay for it. And that's what it comes down to. City of Long Beach owns the Queen Mary, but officials said it's not their responsibility to make repairs on the ship that for decades has been leased out to operators. The current operators is locked into bankruptcy proceedings. Meanwhile, the ship could flood or even capsize within the next 2 years if repairs don't happen. Urgent category work items should be addressed immediately for safety from flooding in the next 2 years, court documents said, noting that the current status of various systems could lead to flooding throughout the ship, potentially capsizing of the ship, and life safety and environment issues. Scary times. You know, the paranormal community needs to step up there. Totally. An English woman has been sentenced to a minimum of 28 years in prison after she was convicted of starving her millionaire landlord to death in order to inherit part of his £3.5 million or $4.9 million estate. 62-year-old Linda Rickard was convicted of murdering 59-year-old Anthony Southeran, a former auctioneer's clerk, at his home located in South Newington, Oxfordshire, in England. Her husband, Wayne Rickard, was acquitted of Southeran's murder, but was still sentenced to 10.5 years in prison for causing or allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. Yeah, shame on this. Southeran died at his home, which had more than 60 acres of land, on March 18, 2014. At the time of his death, he weighed 126 pounds, despite standing more than 6 feet tall. He was immobile and bedbound during his final few weeks, and was deprived of food by Rickard, the department said. Southeran was found severely emaciated in his room, and the court heard that malnutrition and a deep-seated pressure sore led to a fatal lung infection. Although the death was initially not treated as suspicious, activity in his bank account after his death prompted investigators to reopen the case. The Rickards have been live-in tenants with Anthony Sutherland and his mother Joy Sutherland at the farm since 2008. Linda Rickard was paid $66,000 a year to work for as a carrier for Joy, or a care aide for Joy Sutherland, who died in 2012 at the age of 92. They continued living at the farm under a rental agreement with Anthony until his death in 2014. Linda pleaded guilty to both forging the will of Anthony and Joy Sutherland to make eligible for a third of the former's £3.5 million estate and half of the latter's $1.5 million or $2.1 million fortune. She also took around $424,000 from accounts of the Sutherlands and had discouraged visitors to the farm, thus isolating her landlord. However, she denied the charge of murder and claims that his death was caused by the way the 59-year-old chose to live in his final days of life. Prosecutors believe that Linda Rickard's conviction was the first successful prosecution for murder by deliberate starvation in the UK for more than 100 years. Judge Mr. Justice Wallace handed down a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years in prison to Linda and said in court, "Your greed was such that when you thought Anthony Sutherland might act in a way which could derail your gravy train, you murdered him. You murdered Anthony in a most cruel and hard-hearted way. You starved him for food and left him on a mattress on the floor of his room to die." While speaking about her husband, the judge said, "You were the only person who could have saved Anthony, but instead you left him to die the most horrible of deaths." While in a statement read in court, the landlord's daughter, Hannah Sutherland, said, "I can't comprehend how somebody who said they cared deeply for my dad left him to die in such horrible conditions." Hannah has won a civil case to restore the contents of the will to her when the couple attempted to prove that the forged wills were legal. The couple was evicted from the farm in 2017. I should hope so. Totally hope so. There are fears in Belgium that an armed anti-lockdown extremist wants to kill 10 people on a hit list. Oh, here we go. We got a real-life Rambo here. Far-right terrorist Corporal Jurgen Konings, who has been dubbed the Belgian Rambo, has evaded capture during a nationwide manhunt for the last couple of weeks. Now, Belgian police have reportedly beefed up security for those on Konings' list, which includes his ex-wife, her lawyer, Belgian Defense Minister Ludovine de Nonder, and a top COVID-19 expert. Konings reportedly wrote the list and then emptied his bank account and disappeared. Reports say that Konings was armed with heavy weapons, including 4 anti-tank rocket launchers from a barracks when he went missing. In letters, he said he no longer wanted to live in a society ruled by politicians and virologists and wanted to join the resistance. The 46-year-old abandoned his car on May 18th near a national park in Limburg. The rocket launchers were reportedly found in the car. Konings is a former sniper who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. The report said the rest of the people who have been given extra security include senior figures in the Belgian military, which disciplined him for his political views last year. Investigators have said that it's possible that Konings has killed himself, but that they assume he is still alive and running on the lam. Here's a weird one with Florida man. Yeah. A Florida man accused of killing an iguana last year wanted a charge of animal cruelty dismissed on the basis of the state's Stand Your Ground law, and a judge has denied his motion. P.J. Nilaja Patterson was arrested after allegedly beating, dragging, and kicking a 3-foot iguana in Lake Worth, Florida, back on September 2nd, 2020, according to a probable cause affidavit. The animal died as Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control was transporting it to be euthanized, according to the affidavit. Patterson's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss the charge, but Judge Jeffrey Gillen denied the motion. In their motion, Patterson's attorneys said their client was trying to save an iguana from getting run over by cars. When he brought it to safety, a crowd agitated the animal and it bit his right arm when he tried to move it, according to the motion. It said then he kicked the iguana as far as he could. Yes, Patterson had to get 22 staples in his arm because of the bite. In this case, Patterson acted in a reasonable manner under all circumstances because the wild iguana was first to engage with physical violence during the encounter, his attorneys argued. Florida's Stand Your Ground law states deadly force can be used if a person reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. In this case, Patterson's attorney said the animal was the first to engage in aggression, so Patterson had the right to defend himself. They also wrote that Patterson believed the iguana could have injected poison into him. Thus, he rushed to incapacitate the iguana the best way he could in order to preserve its antidote. Yes, Vasconcelos maintains that his client's innocence, and in an email to the media said, "They will fight this case until the very end." He also added the iguana bite left his client with permanent marks. Assistant State Attorney Alexander Dorman wrote in response to the motion to dismiss the entire episode was captured in a 32-minute surveillance video. She wrote that the video shows how Patterson tormented the iguana, which was not bothering anyone and did not pose a threat to anyone. She also said there was no provocation and no justification for the actions. According to the affidavit, Dr. Virginia Sayre of Animal Control performed a necropsy which found the iguana had a lacerated liver, fractured pelvis, blood in its mouth, blood in its abdomen, and a lacerated tongue. Sayre also wrote, the iguana's fatal injuries were painful and terrifying. The defendant unnecessarily put himself in a position to be bit by this animal, Dorman wrote. The state's position is that Stand Your Ground does not even apply to this case because the iguana is not a human being. There you go, Florida man. It's not a human being. Patterson is due back in court July 30th. He faces up to 5 years in jail if convicted of animal cruelty. A Maryland county threw a special birthday party for a set of local twins who celebrated their centennial on this beautiful planet earlier this year. Prince George's County put on the drive-by party for Elaine Foster and Evelyn Lowe as part of the Office of Community Relations' annual 100 Events of Summer initiative. Foster and Lane, who were born and raised in the county, received flowers, balloons, gift baskets, and gift certificates to their favorite restaurant at the celebration. They also asked for Fap and Vin from our chat room to come as chaperones. The two said they are planning to use the gift certificates for sangria. The twins attributed their long lives to taking care of themselves and getting yearly checkups from their doctors. All right, moving on. A Walmart supercenter in Maine, does not give a hoot or holler for public opinion. Case in point, on May 26, they called the cops on a grandpa who was trying to clean up the mountains of trash the store had neglected for years. If you love nature, you want to preserve it as pristine as possible, and Tony Bennett from Bethel is a nature-loving man. I love Maine, and I love the rivers. I love the ponds, the lakes, and the wildlife, Bennett said. With that in mind, it's easy to understand why the Mexico Walmart would start getting on his nerves. According to Bennett, mounds of garbage from the store have been piling behind it for years. The backyard of the stores has been littered by anything from dirty diapers to food wrappers and shopping bags. Bennett has been concerned that the trash would end up in the Androscoggin River that runs right behind the store. So he did what any respectable citizen would do and contacted the store about the issue. That was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I brought it to their attention at several of their stores in the western mountains of Maine here. To his frustration, nothing was done and the trash remained. So when Bennett arrived at the store on May 26, guess what he did? He started cleaning up the garbage. Well, it was worse than that. It seems that the store had actually done something to clear their backyard. The problem was that it only made things worse. They literally just raked it down into the riverbank, Bennett said. They raked from 20 feet of the pavement all the way down the bank, and they dumped it over the bank with all the leaves and debris and garbage for 100 feet long, 20 feet wide, and put it over the bank with all the other trash. That was too much for Bennett, so he decides that he's going to do some landscaping. That's when the police are called, after he took the law into his own hands, and the managers called the cops on him. How rude is that? Come on, Bennett, you know better than that. You can't take on Walmart. They own everything. They don't care as long as the prices are low. Right? Well, apparently, there's a few people who agree with him. He goes, let's see, there's this gentleman who kind of came out of the woodworks here from the police and said, yeah, we're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to do anything. Why would they? One of the neighbors, a lady named Patty Smith, she sang The Warrior back in the day, I think, for Scandal. She lives next door, thinks Walmart should clean up their own garbage instead of pushing it or punishing someone trying to do it for them. Pick it up and take care of it. It's on their back door. I know the police were called and they run him off. I don't think that's all right, though. He was doing a good thing. Dan Hatfield, who witnessed the incident, he was doing no harm. If this guy was doing a good deed and he was doing nothing wrong, then he should have let him just be a good citizen. Now Walmart's got a bunch of egg on their faces. Clean up the garbage, Walmart. Clean up the garbage. It's that simple. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. In your opinion, what's the best roller coaster ride you've ever been on? Darren, Life. Mike, Spaced Out Radio Mountain. Wendy, the Scooby-Doo at King's Dominion when I was 10 because it literally traumatized me from riding anymore. Kimberly, all the wooden roller coasters, Six Flags, and at the Wisconsin Dells. Yeah, baby, yeah. Magnus, the oldest in the United States, leaps the dips at the amusement park my uncle owns. Kate says it's Life. Space Mountain for Sandra. She must like Ric Flair. Chris Jarvis, the original beast at Kings Island here in Cincinnati. Deb, Space Mountain rocks, but I was baptized on the Bobs in Chicago at Riverview. Dave Schrader, you know him. Parenthood, apparently. Jaretta, the old wooden coaster at Elitch Gardens in Denver, Colorado. Joshua, it's been forever since I've been on a roller coaster. I would have to say Top Gun. Drew, hard to say just one, but it's definitely at Cedar Point in Ohio. Dave, I like Cedar Point too, but the best or most significant roller coaster ride I am currently on, being a senior citizen. Kevin, Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. Dave, Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Oh, I got to go to this Cedar Point. Damn it, that sounds good. Superman at Darien Lake. The Hulk at Islands of Adventure. Ufology for Scott. Batman for Vince. And Joe says the Succubus. Ex-fiance, and she was a hell of a ride. Thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. Thank you to Captain Shirk for the news and Debbie Jordan-Kauble for a great topic tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone checking out our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yep, we've got room for them too. Good night.